And with some reluctance, I included a small silver bracelet that has 22 turquoise disc beads set side by side in a row. It fit snug to my arm and I loved it, but its history is what appealed to me the most. Richard Wetherill excavated the beads from a ruin in 1898, and a Navajo silversmith made the bracelet for him the same year. In 1901, Wetherill sold it to Fred Harvey, the hotel magnate. 64 years later, I won it playing pool with Byron Harvey, an heir of Fred's. So speaking of that bracelet, right? In Thrill of the Chase, Forrest Fenn mentions a few things in that one paragraph that really caught my attention. The bracelet itself was not nearly as important as the history of the bracelet. In fact, Forrest almost didn't even want to include it in the chest because of how important that history was. Ultimately, within Forrest's life and kind of the affluence that he reached, the bracelet in terms of material value really isn't much at all. And I think that that's a good sign as to where his values are and what leads him to making the decision to actually hide the treasure and possibly where he chose to hide it. He's pointing to some of his values related to history. In that same paragraph, there's a couple of odd misspellings. The word Navajo is spelt N-A-V-A-H-O instead of J-O as you'd see it today. And that's actually a marker of the time period. So Navajo was spelt with an H for a long time. It started to get standardized, I believe, in the early 40s, but today you see it N-A-V-A-J-O. He's also pointing to a specific time period, or before a certain time, before the 40s is what I would say. The second misspelling is the name of Richard Wetherill. He spells it twice incorrectly. In Thrill of the Chase, in that paragraph, actually spells Richard Wetherill's name W-E-T-H-E-R-E-L-L. And that name should end in I-L-L. The reason why I found this to be interesting is because I only know of one location where I can find that name misspelled like it is in Thrill of the Chase. If we think back to the poem and the first few lines, it ends in hinting of riches, new and old. I think the first stanza is getting skipped, I would say, by most people. I don't know if that's fact, but just based on conversation and some of the things, some of the videos and channels that I've watched, I was kind of on the same page as everyone else that I've been watching for a while, and thinking that riches, new and old, was Forrest leaving a treasure. Someone else comes and picks it up. It was formerly Fenn's, rich is old, and someone new has grabbed it, rich is new. I also toyed with the idea of rich is old and new being kind of a blended meaning, where rich is old could be some cultural heritage site, something like a Pueblo ruin, and then rich is new would be someone that picked up the treasure. And even kind of stretching that one a little bit into considering rich is old as potentially a natural formation, something like that is more has to do with nature being ancient, and then someone comes and picks up the treasure being new. Rich is old and new. However, I started looking into Richard Wetherill because of the bracelet, and have since considered a third possibility, which is that riches, old and new, can actually be a name, as in Richard Wetherill. Richard Wetherill died in 1910. He was actually murdered in Chaco Canyon. There is a grave marker for Richard Wetherill in Chaco Canyon, 2 gravestones in the same plot area that both say Richard Wetherill. And one of them has that same misspelling, the E-L-L instead of I-L-L. One does not. It looks a little bit newer, but that caught my attention because that is the only instance that I know that riches, new and old, could be a single place. If you think that it's just the treasure chest, you never know what riches, old and new is until you get there. If you think it's a natural wonder, it could be hundreds or even thousands of different locations depending on what you think is incredible in nature. If you thought it was a cultural heritage site with, you know, riches being some kind of ruin or something, well, in that case, there's hundreds or maybe even thousands again. But in this instance, riches old and new being Richard Wetherill, there's one. And there's a few other points that I'll cover next time around this Richard Wetherill subject, and I'm actually going to follow it through to 6 or 7 clues so far. And there's some cool photos that I think you guys will find extremely interesting that might blow some of you away. So stay tuned. I'll see how fast I can crank these things out, and please hit the subscribe, give me some feedback. Yeah, I need you guys' interaction to make this thing happen, so let's do it. Thank you.